For context, I, female 19, am from the United States and currently a second-year university student in the UK. My boyfriend, male 23, is British, recently finished his master's, and is now working. We've been dating for 10 months, and he's my first boyfriend. He's been nothing but understanding, kind, and supportive throughout our relationship. I've met his parents and siblings twice, and both times were wonderful. His mom even told him she thinks I'm the one. In late November, he asked if I'd like to spend Christmas with his family. He said everyone would love to have me there, and I thought it was sweet, but I declined. I've been feeling homesick and wanted to spend Christmas, a holiday that means a lot to me, with my family in South Dakota. When I told him, he seemed aloof for a few days. I went to his flat later to reassure him that I'd love to visit his family another time, but for me, Christmas is a family holiday. I now realize how that could have sounded dismissive. He looked hurt and asked, "Do you still love me? And aren't I your family?" I reassured him that I do love him, and things seemed fine after that. About a week later, he surprised me by showing me a flight he'd booked to South Dakota for Christmas. Flights to South Dakota are expensive, especially internationally, and while the gesture was touching, I thought it was impulsive and unwise. I told him it wasn't a good idea. For the first time, he got really upset, accusing me of not caring about him, not being serious about us, and thinking only of myself, all of which are untrue. I love him and value our relationship deeply. Knowing he was speaking out of hurt, I asked him to take a walk to cool off. When he returned, I explained that he means everything to me, but I wasn't ready for him to meet my family. To be honest, I'm nervous about how my family would react. I'm white, he's Arab, and my family in rural South Dakota is not exposed to diversity. They've made ignorant, discriminatory comments in the past. While they'd likely be polite to his face, I fear they might say something offensive or jokingly inappropriate. They also assume Arab equals Muslim, even though he's Christian. This ignorance embarrasses me, and I don't want to put him in a situation where he might be hurt. I didn't tell him any of this, though. Instead, I said I felt it was too soon to bring someone home, as in my family, that's often a precursor to engagement, which is true. He asked if he wasn't good enough, and I reassured him that he's perfect. He then mentioned that the tickets were non-refundable. I started crying, apologizing for wasting his money and saying how much I wanted him there, just not right now. He asked me to leave and said he needed space. I flew back home nearly a week ago, and since then, we've only had brief phone conversations. He still texts me, "I love you," and "good night," but he's clearly distant and hurt. I don't know if there's anything I can do to fix this or reassure him. So, am I the jerk? Now for a few comments. Sparkle Selkai said, "NTA for what you did, but you're the idiot for not explaining why." Everyone is different in their timelines, but after dating for 10 months, it's pretty normal to want to meet the family of your partner. I totally get why you didn't want him to come, but he doesn't get it because you didn't explain it. He probably feels like it's because of him, instead of it being because of your family, and I can see that being really hurtful, especially if he's the kind of guy who is close with his family. It's totally bonkers to just book an international flight without checking with you, though. Like, dude, what are you doing? New Girl Cat commented, "I'm going with Lem. Everyone sucks here. You're 19. Live life a little. I'm not saying you can't meet the love of your life at that age. You could have met that person when you were 10 and still not be on the path for marriage at 19. You've been together for 10 months. His mom telling him you could be the one? At 19? I know he's 23 and the difference is not big, but every reaction he's had and argument you have quoted, he told you, sounds manipulative to me. I could be wrong, but he could be hurt without throwing the eclat. Am I not important? Am I not your family? I'm so sorry, but at 10 months calling himself your family sounds weird." Theresa Dactyl added, "Bold of him to book non-refundable plane tickets without talking to you. Pretty huge red flag, too. You've been together 10 months. He needs to chill the frick out. This seems controlling and clingy. When you get back, you need to be honest with him that you weren't sure your family would behave, and also that you felt him buying tickets was presumptive and moving too fast. You're 19. You don't need to rush things, and he needs to respect your boundaries." Then another commenter, JYQM, said NTA, but with a caveat. First, it's clear that you both are very important to each other, and that Christmas is also important to each of you, though perhaps in different ways. A big part of what's going on here is a communication problem of the sort that is common early in a relationship. And this is important here, it is in fact still early in your relationship. Here's the script based on the provided text. Your boyfriend is a 23-year-old Arab man living in the UK. He knows what racism is, and he knows how rural white Christians can be toward people like him. He is not a child, and you do not need to shield him from anything. This ignorance embarrasses me, and I don't want to put him in a situation where he might be hurt. The first part of this sentence is true. The second part may be true, but is really a post hoc justification because you recognize that the first part sounds selfish. Again, your boyfriend is an adult who can and does, every day, make his own decisions about how and how much he wants to interact with and react to discriminatory white people. Still in all, you're not the jerk because you do have perfectly legitimate reasons not to want him coming to South Dakota for Christmas. You want to spend time just with your family. It is still early in your relationship with your boyfriend, and in your family culture, bringing a romantic partner home for the holidays signifies something that you are not ready to signify yet. So when you get back to the UK, you need to sit down together and have a serious conversation where you both apologize. You need to apologize for not being honest about the full reason why you're not ready for him to meet your family. However he responds to this, don't get defensive. Listen to him and learn from what he says about his own feelings about and experiences with racism. Then, he needs to apologize for trying to dictate the terms of both the holiday and your relationship, and for not listening to your feelings and experiences, but instead playing the nonsense, "Then I guess you don't love me" card. Then you both need to work together on a plan to communicate with each other about these issues more openly and honestly in the future. If you can get through that conversation and feel like you've both been heard and both been met with love, respect, and understanding, then I think you can go into the second year of your relationship with a pretty solid foundation for the future. But that's still a big if. Now for a few comments. Tally0987654321 said, "You're the jerk. If this is a long-term relationship, you should tell your family about it, or risk boyfriend thinking you're ashamed of him. You should tell your boyfriend about your family and let him decide if he's okay with the discriminatory culture shock he may be in for. The way you left it, he is incredibly hurt because you're too weak to tell him the truth. Also, this may be a great way for your family to be exposed to diversity and perhaps see your boyfriend as a great guy. It's awkward for sure, but things are better when dealt with honestly. Boyfriend should have asked you first, but the fact you weren't honest with him, he didn't really have all the info to not make a bad decision here. He may have interpreted that you wanted to be with him on Christmas, but needed to see your family, so he went with that." Sufficient Stay 7358 commented, "I mean, 10 months into a relationship and she didn't already tell her family about it is wild." You responded, "They know about him and have already made discriminatory jokes about him." Orinda Sarnia asked, "Do you push back against that? Have you made it clear to them that this is serious and they need to cut it out? Unless you're planning to go low contact with your family and live in the UK full-time, this isn't going to end well, trying to just push the meeting off into the future." You replied, "My boyfriend and I want to live together in the UK once I graduate. My family doesn't know this yet, and I think this would be another reason to get mad at him. They were already livid about me going to another country for uni. As for their racism, I have told them I didn't appreciate it, but most of the comments I have heard through my sister after they happened." Now for the 2-day update. My boyfriend and I have been dating for 10 months now. He's from the UK where I study at university, and I am currently back in the USA for winter break. I made a horrible mistake about how I handled his invitation to Christmas and refusing to let him come to mine. Yesterday, I decided to call him and try to fix things, since what I did was so wrong. I explained my family's issues with racism. He's Jordanian and I'm white, and how I was wanting to protect him and trying to handle my family's problems before he gets introduced. I acknowledged that I should have told him and handled it poorly, but would be honest with him from now on. I also told him that I had a conversation with my family about my relationship and told them any discriminatory behavior from their end would be completely unacceptable. Initially, he was understanding of my situation. He said my family didn't change the way he felt or viewed me. He was glad I was honest, and he apologized for his reactions earlier. After a while, he said that after what happened, we should lay some ground rules for each person in our relationship. I thought it was going to be things like honesty, trust, consideration, etc. Instead, he literally gave me things I must do in order for this relationship to be successful. Firstly, he told me I couldn't make decisions about things without him first. He basically said that relationships require sacrifice and compromise, and with big things such as Christmas, vacations, etc., I would need him to be okay with me doing these things. He said it was childish of me to be in the habit of doing whatever I want. Secondly, he told me I should distance myself from my family. I actually understand his reasoning here, considering how some of them are discriminatory and not great people. I told him it was complicated, because I still love them despite this, which might make me just as bad? Not sure. I can still see where he was coming from, so I told him that if they ever made a discriminatory comment about anyone in front of me, I would try to educate, and if that didn't work, I would distance myself. He then said I was playing middleman, and that was unfair to him. He said, in a few years when we get married, I would have to make the choice. He finally told me he wants my location on at all times and wants me to go low contact with my male friends, most of which are gay anyways. I told him a lot of these rules seemed over the top, and in the most patronizing tone, he said, "You've never been in a relationship before, and I'm older than you, so you should listen." The moment he said that, I thought it didn't sound like him at all. Most of the time, he is the most easygoing and relaxed person, so I couldn't believe it. I told him I didn't appreciate being talked to like a child, and if he wanted to be someone's father, then he should look for another person. He said that while he still forgave me for what I did earlier, my behavior was a testament to how immature I am. He then said we would continue this conversation another time and hung up before we could even say goodbye. I feel like I partially caused this shift in his behavior by inadvertently making him insecure because of my refusal to let him come. Before this, he was honestly the last person I would ever consider getting insecure. He is very good looking, has a good career, and has always been confident, so I would never think he would act this way. It breaks my heart to know that I caused his actions and want to know how I can convince him to let go of the rules so things can go back to the way they were. Or am I the jerk for declining to follow the rules, and should I just follow them? Edit. I've been in this relationship for 10 months and really do love him. I told my friends the things he said, and they've reiterated the points made here. But I guess it's hard for me to wrap my head around how he could go from such a good guy to this. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet, but please be mindful that it's a lot more difficult for me to look at this objectively. I appreciate everyone's comments and support. I have read every single comment and have thought about my relationship all afternoon. I cried when I realized I must end things. I will be calling, texting him tomorrow morning and breaking up. Now for a few comments. One commenter said, "This is classic controlling behavior. He is trying to isolate you from your family, from your friends, and basically everything that would provide you a place of refuge and shelter if you ever have to leave him. This whole 'I am older, so you must listen' would not fly even if he was 10 years older. But he is 23. That is 4 years older than you. He still is immature. What are the rules for him? What are the sacrifices he makes? Right now, all I can see is him trying to make all decisions for you and make him totally dependent on you, while he gives up nothing." Another commenter added, "I'm going to be brutally honest here. Even if I get downvoted to hell, he comes from a misogynistic culture, even if he's not Muslim, and it's showing. He got angry because you chose your birth family for Christmas, even though you guys haven't been together for even 1 year. He inserted himself in your holidays with those tickets he bought. That was controlling and intrusive, not caring. Now, just because you didn't really tell him why you didn't want him there, to not hurt him, he's taking that as a green flag to call you immature and assume an even more controlling stance. He's already used manipulation. Don't you love me? There's plenty of suffering in your future if you remain with this guy. This has only just begun. Leave him and spare yourself, or regret it later. The choice is yours." Another commenter simply stated, "I agree. I stopped reading at 10 months in. He's demanding she asks permission on all decisions. Run." Now for the update. Hey everyone, I wanted to update on my previous 2 posts. I received great advice from a lot of people, and it immensely helped me evaluate our relationship. I texted my friends about the situation, and they also agreed he sounded overbearing. About an hour ago, I ended things for good. I texted him yesterday afternoon that I thought we should have a serious discussion about our relationship. He said we should wait until we have both cooled off from our conversations earlier, so I suggested tomorrow. He sent me his usual good night and I love you texts, which kinda broke me. His horrible behavior didn't erase 10 months of love that I feel for him, and it almost felt like betraying him, saying the same things back when I knew what I was going to do in the morning. Here's kinda a summarized version of the call. It was over an hour, so I condensed it as much as I could, and I tried to write it as quickly as the call ended so I wouldn't forget. When I called him, he seemed very normal and calm. We talked for 10 minutes just about how things were going and stuff. Then I basically told him that I didn't want to do this, but I thought it would be best if we broke up. I said that we probably expected different things from our partners, and I couldn't do what he wanted from me. After I said that, he sat in silence for like a minute. I thought the call had dropped, but then he said he was processing what I said. He asked me if this was revenge for what he said 2 days ago, and I said no, just a realization of incompatibility. He then said he wasn't going to change his mind on his boundaries, and me giving him an ultimatum was manipulative. I told him that this wasn't an ultimatum, it was going to happen. He then kept repeating, "What the frick my name?" and then told me I didn't mean it. He asked me if I loved him still, and I said yes, and then he said he knows I'll come back. I said this was it. He said something about how we need each other, and went on a rant, but I don't remember that much of it because I was crying at that point. I cut him off at the end and just said goodbye. He said he would never forgive me and I would never see him again since he was that awful, and then hung up. I immediately blocked his number, WhatsApp, Snapchat, and Instagram. I do not think he will have another way of contacting me. I do not think he will seek me out or anything, so I'm not too worried about that. My university accommodation also has front desk security, and you can't get in without a keycard. Thanks again, everyone. Then an edit mentioned. His mom just texted me saying she was sad things ended the way they did, but she wishes me all the best. Minor update. One of his friends tried adding me on Snapchat for some reason. Don't know if it's him using his friend's account. His friend wants to know what happened. Or a coincidence, he added me right when this unfolded. Now for a few more comments. One commenter said, NTA. Setting boundaries and then actually enforcing them is an important life skill. Another added, you did the right thing. He doesn't want an equal partner. He wants a woman who will just do everything he tells her to do. Another commenter concluded, it sounds like you made the right decision for yourself. Relationships should be about mutual respect and understanding, not someone controlling or manipulating your actions. You listened to your gut, stood your ground, and ended things in a way that was healthier for you. It's tough, but you deserve someone who respects your boundaries and values you as an equal. Am I the idiot for breaking up with my girlfriend over a tattoo and finding out my parents are swingers? Here's the script based on the text you provided. I learned Afrikaans, my girlfriend's native language, in secret. I planned to surprise her and her family with my language skills when I met her parents later this year. However, it led me to accidentally overhear some of her private conversations. Here are some things I found out. 1. She plans to reunite with her high school metal band for my birthday. 2. She wants to tattoo all the Harry Potter spells on her back, but is afraid I'll dissuade her. 3. She mentioned that my weenie looks bigger through her glasses than her contact lenses, which is why she keeps her glasses on during intimacy. 4. She thinks my parents are swingers because of the attractive couples at their house. 5. She finished watching Better Call Saul without me. 6. She's reconsidering the band reunion because 2 exes are in it. 7. She expects her dad not to like me. I wish I hadn't learned some of these things, but there's no way to unlearn Afrikaans. Now for a few comments. One commenter suggested keeping it a secret and teasing her about Better Call Saul. Another thought the situation wasn't as bad as expected. I replied that it was far from a major issue. Now for the 4-month update. I proposed to my girlfriend in Afrikaans, and she said yes. I confessed to learning her language and overhearing her conversations. She was embarrassed but apologized, though it wasn't necessary, except for the Better Call Saul part. She hasn't tattooed her back yet, and I advised her to avoid covering it entirely. Her dad might not like me, but I'll win him over. She still believes my parents are swingers and wants to investigate. I told her I was fine with the band reunion unless it made her uncomfortable. She canceled it due to drama among band members. She still wears her glasses during intimacy. Finally, a few more comments. One commenter said the bass player knows not to play for free. Another noted that none of these things seemed damaging to our relationship. Yet another pointed out that watching Better Call Saul without me was rude. Now for the 17-month update. No further content provided. I shared an update related to my original post, but I deleted that update because I was keen to tell the internet that my girlfriend and I got engaged. However, since then, we've not only gotten ourselves unengaged, we've actually broken up. In my original post, my ex-girlfriend, who was still my girlfriend back then, had a wild theory that my mom and dad were swingers just because they always had people at their house. I never believed it, but I thought it was hilarious that someone thought my parents were that interesting. Not gonna lie, I struggled to move on after my relationship ended. My apartment had too many memories of my ex, so I called my parents to ask if I could stay with them for a bit, just to clear my head. My parents said yes. My dad offered to pick me up, which I accepted. What should have been a 10-minute drive unexpectedly turned into a 45-minute drive because my dad decided to take the longer route back to his house. When my dad was done making dad jokes to help me get over my breakup, he started doing that weird dad thing where he's trying to bring up an awkward topic, but it's too uncomfortable for him to just spit it out, so he ends up saying a bunch of words that only he understands. I was forced to interrupt my dad and basically beg him to make sense. My dad said since it was unclear how long I was going to stay, he felt compelled to prepare me for what I might see at the house. If my ex was present at that moment, she would have punched me on my shoulder and said, "I told you," because my dad confirmed her swinger theory, which no longer made it a theory, but the truth, or as I like to call it, trauma. By the time my dad and I finally made it to our destination, my dad made sure I knew everything I needed to know. I made a list based on what I learned from my dad. 1. Both my parents were swingers when they met. 2. Swinging was not something my parents wanted to do while raising kids, so swinging was prohibited when my parents became parents. 3. To see if they still got it, my parents switched back to swinging when they had the house to themselves again, and lo and behold, they still got it. 4. Hosting swinger parties was something my parents did frequently, usually with themes. 5. My parents were planning to host another swinger party, but my mom was leaning towards calling it off so that I could come home and stay for as long as I wanted. 6. If my parents were forced to cancel, it would be the first swinger party they called off since Infection 19. Number 7. The theme was prom night. I never expected my dad to go that hard in the too much information category, but as soon as he crossed that threshold, he got it all out of his system. I stayed with my parents for a total of 2 days before it became abundantly clear to me that knowledge might be power for some people, but for me, knowledge was punishment. My mom, who was unaware that I low-key knew she was swinger mom, attempted to convince me to stay longer, and she almost succeeded, but I was done with my dad using our father-son bonding time to play guess which one of our neighbors are also swingers. I used an Uber to get back to my apartment. No more dad rides. I've never been so happy to return to a place that was haunted by my failed relationship. Now for why the relationship ended. My ex and I broke up because of a tattoo. Her friend passed away, which prompted her to literally get his name tattooed on the back of her neck. The friend was someone my ex used to sleep with before she met me. I made it clear to her, prior to the tattoo, that I understood that it was her body to do with whatever she wanted, but as someone who was prepared to be with her forever, it was going to be uncomfortable for me to see another guy's name on her body for the rest of our lives, especially the name of a dead guy she had casual intimacy with. My ex got the tattoo anyway. The tattoo was small and barely visible. That was her defense. I knew it was there. That was enough. It was also very visible in the doggy-style position. We argued about the tattoo until we eventually said enough hurtful things that could never be unsaid. Clearly, the tattoo was worth losing me because the tattoo is still there, and I'm not. Now for a few comments. One commenter said, "I can't stay here. Too many sad memories." 2 days later, "Save me from the horrible things I now know. Sad memories." Then I replied, "I would gladly relive the pain of my relationship getting napalmed, then listening to my dad make up synonyms for swingers like no monogamo." Another commenter said, "Don't tell your ex the no monogamo. She might add it to the list of spells she wants tattooed on her back." Someone else asked, "How much of their decor is pineapple themed?" I responded, "A few comments in my previous posts made me aware of the meaning behind the pineapple in the swinger community, so I've actually been on the lookout for anything that so much as remotely resembled a pineapple whenever I was with my parents, but to this day, no pineapples." That being said, based on what I know now, thanks to my father, I actually won't be surprised if my parents were literally living in a pineapple house, like SpongeBob's, that only other swingers could see. Am I the idiot for refusing to let a stranger give birth in my bedroom despite her family's history in my house? This is one of the stranger things that's ever happened to me. To set the scene, I, 26, bought the house I'm living in 2019 from this lovely older couple. I thought, as I'm sure anyone who has been in this situation might think, that the signing was going to be the last time I ever saw them or had anything to do with their family. I was wrong. Yesterday, I got a knock on my door. I opened it to find a young couple, probably my age, maybe a bit younger. The woman was pregnant and looked like she was going to pop any day. I asked who they were and if I could help them. The woman replied that this home used to belong to her parents and that she was born in this house. I asked again what it was that they wanted, since that didn't really tell me if they needed anything from me. She told me that her mother had also been born here, in the upstairs bedroom. For context, this is now my bedroom. She then asked if I wouldn't mind letting her bring the stuff that was needed to give birth in the same spot as she and her mother were both born in. I said no, keeping in mind that A, this isn't her or her parents' house anymore, and B, that the bedroom in question is my bedroom. Now, I thought that this was as normal as a response as was possible given the strange question, but when I was telling my friends about this afternoon, one of the girls in the friend group said that it was pretty cruel of me to tell a pregnant woman where she can and can't give birth. I didn't think that what I had said was all that strange, considering I had never met the couple before, and I don't exactly want a strange woman giving birth where I sleep, but my friend insists that I could have come to some sort of arrangement. So here I am, asking you guys, am I the jerk? Edit. So I would just like to add, my friend isn't an idiot. When we were having this conversation, we were, let's say, having a fun time with fun substances. When I asked her about it today, she genuinely thought she'd imagined the conversation. Obviously, she thinks it's a horrible idea for liability and health reasons, aside from it being weird. And for those concerned that she's getting high as a nurse, she's off for the next 2 weeks. She's flying home for the holidays, so we were having a little get-together for those of us who are leaving for home. And for those saying that I made this up, I wish I had an imagination that good. I'd start writing if I did. I couldn't have predicted or come up with something like this in 100 years. Edit 2. I got an email back from the previous owners. I managed to get their contact info from the realtor who sold the house. It turns out, yes, they have a daughter. Yes, apparently, she is actually pregnant, and they have cut her off for being a bit on the crazy side. So yeah, I asked for anything that might be helpful for getting any kind of protection order for my house. But the cops have said that unless she actually tries anything, there isn't anything they can do. So I guess on Monday, I get to talk to someone in my county's court system to deal with this. Now for a few comments. Mother Search 3350 said, "Your friend is an idiot. You did not tell her where she can give birth. You told a complete stranger that she can't give birth in your house in your bedroom. Not the idiot." Mormisa1 commented, "NTA in any way, giving birth in someone's home, without medical assistance whatsoever. What TF? I think you're the only sane person in this entire situation." Be Call Mankind added, "I don't think the advisability of home birth was the question. The question was, should OP let a stranger deliver a baby in her bedroom in the house she owns? It's not a question of home birth or not. It's a question of whether to let a stranger conduct an activity in her home. I can't imagine anyone saying yes to this." Acute Death 2023 asked, "Was your friend high and the pregnant woman is delusional? Not the idiot." Now for the 1-month update. Well, I didn't think I'd be updating, but this got crazy. If you remember from the original post, the apparent daughter of the previous owners of my house came to my door a little bit ago and asked if she could give birth in my bedroom. Honestly, it's as crazy as it sounds. Reading my original post won't make it make much more sense. A couple of things before I get into it. Some friends have shown me that the post has indeed broken Reddit containment and pointed a few things out to me, so I'm going to set a few things straight. Most other websites assume I'm a woman, IMNB, and will not elaborate further on that point. Not being snippy about it, but I just wanted to set the record straight, lol, on that point. Second thing, some people have assumed this was fake and that I probably made up the scenario because they think I think it's hot. No, I don't. I think the entire scenario is creepy and off-putting. And lastly, yes, I know that 21 is pretty young to be buying a house and made the whole thing seem fake. I live in the Midwest, which is pretty cheap to begin with. It's not a huge house, and I got a small claim after an incident at work, so I used the money from that for my future. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what I say. I know some people will still assume I've made the whole thing up or used ChatGPT to make it. But that said, if you don't think this is real, just move on with your day. I truly wish it wasn't real. Last note, there were a couple of people asking why I got the cops involved with the original incident, and I only got them involved when the original homeowners told me that the woman was a bit on the loose screw side of things. So I did that because when you are told that the person who came to your door might be a bit unhinged, you take that step for your own peace of mind. Anyway, last week Friday, at about 1:30, I get a knock, heavy pounding at my door. I go and answer, wondering just who the hell would be visiting me in the middle of the night when I see a familiar face at the door. It's the pregnant woman with her husband, boyfriend/partner, I don't know what, and 2 women who I assume are midwives. From what I gather, the woman went into labor earlier that day and is hoping I changed my mind. I haven't and ask them all to leave. The woman starts having either a breakdown or a contraction or something because she just starts screaming on my driveway. One of the other women in the group explains to me that they drove 4 hours to get here, and if I wouldn't mind letting them set up. She tells me that the woman had told them that she had arranged for the house and that she was nearly ready to push. From what I understood, the woman had lied to her midwife about me agreeing to this, and had essentially tried to trick her into forcing me into letting this happen in my house. I tell her a firm no, and that if needed, there's a hospital only 5 minutes away from where I live, the same hospital my friend works at from my original post. No, she wasn't there. She was on vacation at the time, and ask them all to leave. The woman starts screaming and crying about how I'm ruining this for her, but between me closing and locking the door, her partner, and her midwives, she gets back into their van and drives off. I don't know if this was a guilt trip or if they were delusional or what, but here's the thing about me. I am an absolute pushover. I probably would have just pretended to be asleep and not even opened the door and waited them out. But here's the thing. I had a different friend, her wife, and their highly autistic child spending the night on their way back home after the holidays. I'm cheaper than a hotel, lol. All the noise and commotion, plus the unexpected midnight visitor, severely triggered the kid, and it took nearly 2 hours to calm her back down enough to get her to sleep. She's a good kid and means the world to my friends. So having someone else who would have been severely affected by this, I managed to find a bit of my spine, which is why I wound up opening up the door to ask them to leave. Honestly, I shouldn't have even opened the door and just called the cops first thing. But the good news is that after a couple of minutes talking to the midwife, She agreed to take the whole show elsewhere. After they all left, I did call the police on the non-emergency line and updated them on what was going on and gave them the footage of the previous incident and the latest video I have of the incident. I'm really hoping that now she's given birth, she'll leave me alone. Either way, in addition to my Ring camera, I've asked my neighbor to keep an eye out and call me if anything happens while I'm at work. I also got deadbolts to install for all of my exterior doors. I changed the locks when I bought the house, which honestly seemed to have been a good idea, but this is just to make me feel a bit better about the whole thing. Now for a few comments. First commenter said, "Wow, you didn't even offer her to record it and cut the umbilical cord. Insane." Then another commenter added, "I was envisioning them rejected and locked out of the house, setting up the inflatable birthing pool on the front lawn, using water from the garden hose, screaming all night, and ending the life of the grass." Another person chimed in. Five says crazy daughter will be back asking for her child to spend time in her childhood home. Someone else joked, in 19 years, she'll be knocking on the door, ready to pop with her own. Another commenter said, nothing says birth plan like ambushing a homeowner in the dead of night with a DIY delivery squad. Clearly, you were just one inflatable pool away from becoming the Midwest's most reluctant birthing center. Honestly, the nerve of you to ruin her magical experience by, wanting to not host a surprise labor party in your living room. Next time, you should really think ahead and install a no deliveries, human or otherwise sign on your front porch. How dare you value your sleep, your friend's peace, and your general sanity over her Pinterest-worthy home birth fantasy? Then another commenter asked, and nothing says competent midwife like agreeing to take a woman in active labor on a 4-H road trip. Finally, someone questioned, is midwife a protected term in the US? In the UK, you have to be fully qualified and registered to be a midwife. To which another replied, that doesn't stop some of them being delusional quacks who actively endanger women's lives. In Australia, there's apparently a contingent that call themselves birth keepers or something stupid like that, who basically do unlicensed midwifery. They're responsible for some deaths that we know of.